this API. For reasons I never understand. And the reason I think it should be
Yeah, wondering where I can. This one doesn't seem to like to join. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, let's start then. The blue sheet should be already going around. This is Ipsecme working group meeting. And if people are still talking, they are going to be minutes takers. Oh, Michael is volunteering, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is Ipsecme working group. I'm one of the chairs, Tero Kivinen, and this is Dave Wolfmeyer. Go next slide. You have the slides. Okay, this is the notewell. I guess all you will note it already. So next one. So we have the blue sheets, or actually one blue sheet going around. I didn't want to put the other one because there's so few of us here. And then you get the note takers, and Michael was already saying, yes, right.
What?
The note taker.
I have a note. I am taking notes.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
Anybody else want to help Michael? All right, good. Okay, then I think we already have a subscribe. Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. All right, so next one. So this is our agenda. I had a little bit modified it since I posted it first time. There's going to be a little bit more discussion about the algorithm documents, and there's going to be perhaps the minimal ESP stuff in the end, depending if we have time, and we should have because we have half an hour more time than we were originally supposed to have. Any comments or changes or something like that? Any other items people want to put in the end? Okay, so let's go for one. So this is the finished and almost ready drafts. Actually, it's very hard to see anything here. Yeah, so we have published 2 RFCs in our charter list, and we have 2 approved by ISG. The mandatory to implement algorithms drafts, but there are some issues there, and that's going to be later in drafts. And then we have one draft, the TCP NCAPs, that is now in IETF at last call, and also on Telechat. And Telechat was moved a little bit further away when AD noticed that he actually forgot to put it in the last call. Okay, go to the next slide. All right, so IC version 2 mandatory to implement algorithms. There's no issues in GenArt or OpsClear. There were some minor needs in SecClear. And then the ISG was actually reading the document because they noticed that there is an inconsistency there. It says that triple S is, the text says it should not, and the table say may. And I think the may is actually the correct one. This is, it has been may originally, that the should not text was added there in the way back there in the text. And we just, I think it was because, we added that the same text to the, other document at the same time. And it is should not in for IPsec, the ESP, because there is a problem with the IVs. With IC version 2, it doesn't matter. We are never going to send that much data that the 32, the short, block count actually matters. So we actually can keep it as a may here. And the reason I think may is okay is because it was the mandatory to implement before that. So moving it from mandatory to implement to should not is actually something that is bit to drop, and there's no reason to be anything else there. So if anybody has any comments on this?
Paul Vargas. I do, because I learned now a very valuable lesson. Never give text slides to the chair because he will modify it.
Yes.
So I had a few more issues.
They are on the next page.
Oh, okay.
This is the page 1.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, pausing.
All right. So, okay, go to the next slide. Okay, these are new issues. And I removed one of your new issues because I don't think it's a new issue. There was also text about saying Cha-Cha 20 isn't should, but it's not enough for should plus, and that there was some, I had sent an email about that. But anyway, so we have some inconsistencies there that I actually think all of them are international. I think they are supposed to be this, but we can actually talk about those. So first of all is this ECDSA. Text says that they are expect to be downgraded, but it still should, and it's not should minus. And I think that's actually is correct. But it's something that we are saying, yes, we are going to be in the future, we are going to be downgraded, but we are not downgrading it yet because we don't know what is going to happen with them. And that's of course one of the things we can discuss. But
so maybe if you maybe if you go back to the introduction of the draft where we explain what should minus means. It means that we think this will be downgraded in the future.
Yeah, I know.
Excellent candidate for should minus.
Yeah, why do we expect ECDSA to become downgraded?
I think the current I think the current view is that there is no hash negotiation there, and the other thing is that people are, if everything goes fine and we start using EDDSA, then we are going to be deprecating these. But if we don't move to the EDDSA, then we actually if you don't move to the curve of 5590, sorry, not EDDSA, but the safe curves, then it is difficult, but not the signatures.
It sounds very speculative.
Yeah, that's why I think
Nobody's
actually
using EDDSA for certificates now at all, and don't see any statement from any CAs that they are going to move to EDDSA.
Yeah, actually, this is ECD. Actually, ECDSA. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So that's why I actually think that should is still okay, because we don't have what is going to be replacing it. We don't see what is going to be replaced, but we can see that there's people saying that these are not so good. We should move away from that, and that's why I think they might be going down. And I think that text is very vague about this. It's just say, we might be seeing this going down in some phase, or might not.
Anything might happen. The next signature algorithm that we actually use might be something post-quantum, and maybe it's only coming in 20 years, and this is very speculative to me.
That's why I think the should is still okay. Okay.
Tommy. Yeah. Right. I'm fine with either. Should we perhaps, rather than, I should look at the text again, but rather than saying just expected downgrade, should we mention specifically what we think is replacing? Like if we mention if EDDSA is being used, if the safe curves are being used, that's the likely path. Just so when we're looking at this in the
future, if it would be the working group last call, yes. If we would be in the working group last call, yes, we would modify that. But when we are past the telesat, ISG has approved it. I don't want to do any extra, text changes that are not mandatory to, that are not really needed. The triple S is clearly inconsistent in the document. This isn't. It's just we are saying should, and then we say that yes, this might go down, but it's not in a phase. And then, for example, if we move to the next one, the digital signatures, it says expect to be promoted in the future from should to should plus or something like that. The reason why it's not should plus now is that we don't have enough implementations to actually see if it's going to be gaining, implementation. It's the same thing with the Cha-Cha 20. Yeah. It's not should plus, even if you actually think that if everything goes fine and everybody implements it, it's going to be next mandatory to implement algorithm. But, before we see at least one implementation, we are not going to be doing that.
So to your comment before about, if safe curves, that's mainly just waiting for implementations.
Yeah, I think most of these are actually, seeing what happens with the other things. So I actually don't want to put in any,
Okay.
Thing.
Okay, cool.
Paul?
Actually, the text for Cha-Cha says it is too new for should. And
Should plus, it's too new to should plus. There's a plus in should.
Okay, not in my note here, but I will double check.
I think I was checking that. At this time of writing, there is not enough equation to implement the support in Java 20 to be able to introduce a should plus level.
One comment.
That's why I removed it there, because I think it was clear why it was not the should plus. Yeah.
Hujin from Nokia. So one comment regarding the digital signature, regarding the implementations right now. So 3GP V13, I think they just clarify their text in the standard to use digital signature instead of the old ECDSA based authentication. So it will push vendors or this all wise vendors to implement.
That's why it says should, meaning that yes, you should implement it. And it most likely might be the mandatory to implement argument, or then we go to the EDDSA. I'm not sure. That's actually one of the things I'm not sure which one is going to be the next to mandatory implement argument, EDDSA or the digital signatures.
Right, and just to that point, internally, we've implemented now EDDSA and digital signatures and the curves and cha-cha poly. So
We will get
things are coming down the pipeline.
yes, good.
So it should be good.
And the last one, there is this ECDSA with SAR256. I don't know why you were actually saying it should be should plus. I think it actually should be should still. Okay, so my guess is that I think the only change, my take is that the only change we actually do is the triples. And Paul, are you agreeing on that? Okay, if people agree on that, then I think that these are just something text that, and if it would be last call, yes, we could actually chat admin text and think about this. But when we are this far away, and we hopefully are going to be reissuing this, as a new proposed algorithms or mandatory algorithms faster than what is 10 years that they've taken for the last time. So hopefully, in 5 years or 3 years, we actually come back to this.
Oh, so should I push this change out that we just said about
Yes.
triple S?
Triple S out, and you had some needs. Yeah.
Should I wait for ISG?
No, the ISG is already past ISG. So I think you got to make a new version of the
Okay,
draft
thank you.
and ask from the ISG if it's okay, if the changes you did are solving their issues.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of nits from Benoit, from the GenArt review, and from Ben Campbell's comments, I think, that also need to be addressed.
Those are already done in a draft. Like I have a draft on here.
Okay.
So those are all addressed.
When do you plan to post it?
After the meeting?
Awesome.
Or if it's really boring during the meeting?
Okay, let's go to the next issue is ESP algorithms. So there is also same things, we have some reviews, nothing stuff, some minor needs and so on. But this is the issues here from the ISG. So there was this that is obsolete, the 7321 in cryptographic recommenders only, and I think agree that the cryptographic is completely obsolete word there, and we should just remove it. So they are happy. Then the manual keying is something that actually needs to be having some text. That actually is. The current text is there saying that, okay, if you use manual keys, you must use ASCBC mode. And I think that's actually was a little bit, it was trying to say that, okay, that's when it's mandatory to, use, but not mandatory to use, but mandatory to, implement. It's not supposed to be, it's mandatory to use. So that's actually something that we need to fix. And there is also, text saying that you must not use ASGCM and any of these ciphers that are not safe without the if the non-keys or keys are same.
Yeah, Paul. I'm not sure if this worked. I don't hear it. Hello?
It is.
Okay.
You have to need to be very close to it.
Okay, I'll eat it. Yes. Okay, here we go. So yeah, I already have the text, and you're right. Basically, we just concluded that CBC was the only one you could use, so we said must. But we should really say these algorithms you cannot use because of manual keying and guaranteed counters and IVs. You cannot use these algorithms. So if we've I have text, so just flip it around.
Yeah, but actually, I don't know what would be the difference between having the Blowfish ESP or ASCBC, Blowfish CBC or ASCBC. Yeah, but anyway, Yeah. But anyway, so I would say that the mandatory manual keys, we should and we should actually not say any use. We should say implementations. That's the other thing.
Michael Richardson. So what I heard you say is that this document will be updated such that it will say the following algorithms can or should be used, the following algorithms should not be used, and anything not in this list is a may. Is that what I heard you say?
No, actually, we are currently saying that manual keys should not, or actually, I think that's actually something we're actually going to
Well,
be
then you have
saying.
another category that you might say for manual keying.
Yeah.
you
There's,
might-
in manual keying in general should not be used ever. And if you actually, I think it actually must not be used.
I think that it needs to say, if you're stupid enough to use manual keying, then the following things are really bad ideas, so don't use them. And if that list, if the list of safe algorithms is empty at the end of that effort, that's okay.
So currently it says that the manual key is not to be used as is inherently dangerous. And I think that actually is, that's talk about use, and I think that actually is good for saying use, because actually people are going to be implementing manual keys anyway, because it's some cases useful for debugging and so on, and testing type of thing. So I don't want the people to say that, okay, you are not conforming to this RFC if you happen to implement manual keying. And it's actually sometimes people actually use it to plug into different key management protocols. But anyway, so I think it's well to say that it should not be used. It's correct there. But then we know which algorithms is actually very difficult. And I think this is something that we can solve here. I think we actually should come back to the list and talk about having text in front of it. Go ahead.
I just recalled one question and going down, and would like to ask the working group to see if it would be a good choice. We've been thinking about deprecating triple dash, and we know that there are some places it's still being used, and we wonder if we do that, would anybody having a heartburn for that policy option?
No, we already say for ESP it should not, and for IC version 2 it's going to be may. So we don't care if you deprecate it, and people can actually remove it.
We say deprecate, which means like no use.
That's fine for us. Because
Okay.
we already say it's made to implement in IC version 1, and it should not be used, should not in ESP. So.
Okay.
And if you have done that before, we would have go to the must not.
Okay. Sounds good then. All right. Thank you.
So Daniel, I think the reason we said must not for the manual keying is not only it's a bad idea, but only one of the suites is mentioning that must not. But the other two suites are not so clear about the must not. So I think in GCM, I think that's GCM, but I'm saying
GCM and Polytop, Chacha 20 or actually any of the counter mode ciphers are inherently dangerous with the manual keys, because in manual keys actually means that you type in the keys in the config file, and when you reboot, you start the sequence number from the scratch, and you actually have catastrophic
there is only
encryption.
one that says in the RFC must not use manual keying.
Yeah, actually. So there are several main algorithms that can be used with actually all the CBC modes are somewhat safe with manual keys, but I think the current text was supposed to say that if you are implementing manual key and you are using it against our best advice, use at least ASCBC and not Flowfish or something else.
So for the manual keying, I think besides the testing and debugging purpose, actually there's a real use case, which is using the LSPW v3 authentication, which relate to use it for the multicast, because LSPW packets, a lot of them are multicast packets, and there's no practical way to do anything otherwise besides using manual keying. So that's a real use case. I don't think we should say we must not use manual keying, because there's a real use case there.
So Palva, I'll answer that. In 2 or 3 years, there will not be any algorithms left for you to use with manual keying securely. So you're going to have to face that change anyway. I just want to say, since this document is about updating IETF algorithms, this whole
No, this is
manual-
ESP
Oh,
7321.
okay, never mind.
All right, so there's a couple of other issues. There is this out null and out none, or actually null and out none. There is some text about, we are talking about the null, authentication when we're supposed to bring out none and so on. And there is, what else? There is text about we are changing the renaming some algorithm, because we are now using the algorithm names as they are in INA registry. The 7321 actually used them, in the some kind of, form that was about the same than INA, but not the same. So these are something that I think we are already, you have some of these already in there. So these are the changes we are going to be doing. But so the manual keying text, we come back to the mailing list about having some paragraph there. It's one paragraph we are going to written, and I think all the others are fine.
Okay, Paul. And then the last one, I'm not sure if it's needed, but it came back from ISG review. Is that they wanted some more explicit entry that said that anything not listed may be used. And I think we sort of argue that we've already explained this in the introduction or the abstract, and we don't need it again. So
I agree.
So I don't
that.
know how to resolve that issue.
You can just say that, okay, point those two out, and so I think that should be, we have
Okay, so then I will not make any changes for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all of these are actually comments. All right, next one. EDDSA. So actually now, so this is we have working group last call done, and there was this question about should we use Giro or should we use something else for identity. And I think most people in the list seem to be favoring of using new number. And I just wanted to see if there is anybody here actually want to talk using Giro instead of. Don't see anybody. Or you have a comment?
Yes, I have a comment about EDDSA. I like elliptic curve, things like that, but I have two concerns about EDDSA and the way to push it. First, it's not certified, agreed, or something about official authority about crypto, which can be a problem. And second, which is more problem for me, there is no EDDSA code available in OpenSSL or PKCS 11. I believe there are some PKCS 11 people here. So as an implementer, I can't write a code supporting EDDSA today and release it. So I'm afraid to push today EDDSA. It can be counterproductive. That would be a shame because it's a nice thing.
Well, we have to have standards both here and in TLS that are specifying the use of EDDSA before it's worth OpenSSL's while to actually implement it. And I have heard from Rich, he's not in the room, but that they are working on it. They plan for some next release that's coming out next year, I think. So it will be a thing. The thing is, the algorithm that we're using in IKE is generally decided by the certificate that we're using. And as long as the major CAs are issuing only RSA or ECDSA, that's what we're going to use. But we're making these documents in expectation that at some point we will be able to use EDDSA. And OpenSSL code is coming. There's many other libraries that already have such code, so I don't see that as a problem. As for the identifier for the hash, well, 0 is already called none, and it's no hash is sort of sounds like it, but because some people might use 0 for special value, then it's fine to use the next available number.
And if I understand correctly, the 01 version actually already removed the text about the 0. Yeah. So we actually are ready to go forward.
Tommy Polly Apple. So just, I mean, to the point of, is it ready? Should we do it? Sadly, implementation isn't open, but we have implemented EDSA and Ike. It's working. It's good. We definitely want to move ahead with it. So I don't want to hold it up for any reason. Internally, right now, we're using 5 because that's the next number. We haven't deployed that yet, but it'd be great to get number 5 out there so we don't do bad things.
To get number 5 out, the authors need to make a request from IANA. It's expert review the document which register, which means that when you make the number 5 request to IANA, IANA will send it to me and I will keep the number.
Maybe we can talk to the experts.
No, you have to go through IANA. Expert can't give the numbers directly.
So I mean, I guess do we want to hum on the number and just?
I guess because nobody said anything about the zero except and he was saying yes, okay. So I think actually we are going to be with the 5, and the current text in the document is okay. So I think actually we should, after this document, we should start. Actually, we have done the last call, but so we should actually make start the publication requested for this soon.
One more thing. At Kernel, they said that they might replace the OID, and then we would have to issue a new draft with the new OID, but finally they decided to stay with the old OID, so text is fine as it is.
Yeah, they rolled back, so it's because they said, okay, yeah, for new OIDs, we're actually going to be other, but for the already assigned OIDs, we're going to use the ones that they are. So no issue there. All right, so next. Okay, split DNS. I think we had a. You have which version you have? Actually, you have the old version.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought.
This is the 03 version.
Oh yeah, actually, it's the next slide. I didn't remove that one. Okay. All right. So now,
Magic.
Who wants to talk about this? Paul or who's going to talk about? Do you, Paul, want to have this next for the slides you have never seen before?
Oh yeah, this is no slides. This microphone's much better. Okay, so we removed the request limited domain. So the client could send a list of domains it only was interested in, and we talked about this, and we removed that feature. So therefore, the internal DNS domain option for the sender is 0 size. We added some local policy clarifications, and we removed the requirement for the child SVA to be up for any DNS IP addresses that were sent. So previously we said, if you send an IP address 10.123 as a DNS name server for one of the domains, then you must make sure that there's a child SA up for that IP address. And after talking previously in the working group, it was decided to remove that. So those were the issues we changed in the last version. That was like the 0.0 document after adoption. So the open issues are, there's 2 items where we had consensus about changing this CFG request, CFG reply, and the attribute, where we decided that you could only reply to them when you saw them, and that was sort of based more on the IKV1 model. And the IKV2 core RFC actually says that you can send these things optionally, and you should be able to ignore them. So we still need to make those changes, but those changes will be made. And then the only real open issue is the issue on the DNS and what to do on the VPN disconnect or reconnect, where specifically Tero and me have quite different opinions on what to do with the cache entries. So my opinion is the case where if I connect to redhat.com and I want to talk to bugzilla.redhat.com, I'm getting the internal IP address, and if I cache that, and if I then disconnect my VPN, then I need to go back to the public IP address of the server. So I need to flush my cache. And so for me, it's important that that's in the protocol that says, flush the cache for all these entries if you reconnect or disconnect your domain. And then Tero has a different opinion on that.
Tero Q&A inside secure. So yeah, I think it's actually, it's something, I don't want to delete the, cache entries immediately when you have, a child SA going down, or I could say they're going down. Because I mean, that would actually, cause troubles if you have it. Because what you usually do, you just recreate it immediately. But if you tear down and then you have, all of your connections, failing because the DNS name isn't funny. That's actually not very funny when you have, 10 tabs open of the internal names, and then you suddenly have them,
I agree, but in my view, you just have not torn down the connection yet, so you're welcome to use your old cache.
Yeah, but your text says that when it goes down, you remove the cache entries immediately. you must remove them.
Yeah, that's the question. Well, actually, in IQ2 it's the
I-
same, right? Because if you kill the Ike, then the child's also go.
Child is not the issue. Child is not the issue. It's IKSA going down.
Mike?
All right,
Mike?
Mike.
You have Mike, please.
Sorry, if you don't flush the cache, then you, well, it's not hold. If you don't flush the cache, then you end up with entries for non-routable IP addresses, and that's not going to work anywhere.
No, that's the idea. When you have non-routable addresses, then what happens there? Then when you send the traffic, it will trigger the IPsec to create it again, and then you have it back on. That's the basic idea. Because I mean, you have the triggering rules there still.
So Michael Richardson, so I think that Paul's use case where you have a different A record or quad A record for an internal versus external, I think that's maybe fundamentally broken. So I think that, but and I realize it's done all the time. I think it's fundamentally broken. I think that you should have either two different names or something that because if there is some risk of disclosing traffic, and you would go publicly if the link was down, then obviously there's no risk of disclosing traffic, right? Because you would be happy to do it in the clear. Then you should just do, well, who cares? Do it in the clear, or whenever it changes, do it in the clear or whatever. But Taro's use case, I think, is that you have a bunch of these internal things that you want to reach again. So you close your laptop, you move addresses, your IPsec died, you bring it up and you hit reload. You expect it to work, and to do anything else is inviting users to get confused.
So that would be based on the TTL of those DNS records in your cache. That is really sketchy. So you'll end up like with half the time it not working anyway because the DNS record happened to expire. And you're just typing in names that aren't part of the public. So actually, you don't know if you'll get the internal address or an annex domain.
One of the reasons why I think the split DNS is fundamentally broken, actually, but assuming that you've pinned some things to have some domains be internal, okay, that should not expire, even if the TTL of the rest. So you've just said, I've got some configuration that means some domains I look up internally through these other places. That stuff should probably have its own TTL. Does it? I don't know. I haven't read the document in detail to know that. And that should persist for a period of time. And I think that period of time is potentially very long.
But then you've got this really inconsistent result as if you boot your laptop with a 0 cache and you're trying to reach this internal resource, it's not going to trigger any VPN. Because
well, I know, and so that's part of the question that I have, and I think that's fundamentally broken, and I think that we have better solutions in DNS that most people who live in a v4 only world don't understand, that would permit this to work very well. That's right. So I realize you guys live in this real world of administrators that think they own 10net and there's only one 10net and they only have one VPN up, right? So I know that. I know that those people. I mean, I think they're idiots, and we're supposed to help them out, right? So I'm saying if we're going to help them out, then we need to have that some kind of pinning. So that those things have to have a time to live, and every time you bring up your VPN, then I think you get essentially new records and new TTLs, and everything's good, right? I think you can make that work, but I don't think you want to flush the cache when the connections go down. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Or if you do, maybe Paul's right. Maybe you want to flush it every single time because you want to make a consistent experience, which is that the user learns the names will never work unless he clicks on his VPN button, even if he just moved from this room to the next room and closes lid temporarily. He knows he has to hit the VPN button and get out his card maybe and whatever, right?
Why does your VPN die when you suspend your laptop? But that's another.
Because they don't have more.
I suspend my laptop because I wind up on weird networks. It's called Hotel or something. I don't know. But.
Tommy Polly Apple. So, I mean, I think the kind of the real world perspective that's driving this, I think we need to leave in something about flushing the cache. I'm fine softening it and saying, like, depending on what your implementation does, you may flush the cache, or if you expect these DNS names to be truly global and managed correctly and you don't have a broken split DNS configuration from your enterprise, then you cannot flush it. I think we can just iterate that. I don't think it needs to be solved in this document. This doesn't need to solve the world's problems on split DNS. To the point of triggering, so I mean, at least on our end, we're not going to trigger based on the address once the VPN has gone down. Oftentimes, what solutions do now is that they trigger based on the fact that the hostname cannot be resolved anymore. And so rather than triggering based on address, you trigger based on something about the name or the DNS failing, and you realize that, oh, dang it, I got screwed up. Yeah. Yes, it's a known PIN name. So there are other ways to solve this, so I don't think we need to iterate them all here. We can soften language and just kind of move on.
But will the softening of the language cause interoperability or expectation problems later on? Because we already have different expectations in this room.
So does I don't know if the expectations really matter all that much, because it's really just a local client policy about what it does. So, I mean, to the point of where we've gone in the draft of saying that, the client is no longer specifying to the server, here's the ones that I'm willing to accept. Essentially, the client's already potentially trimming down the list of domains that it's going to be doing split DNS for. It's making its own local policy decisions. It can also make its own local policy decision about how it treats the cache.
Yeah, that I agree.
That's consistent.
That I agree.
Yeah.
Kyle Deckertz, Facebook. I have seen some issues where people want to basically, when you're on VPN, redirect people on that VPN to, say, some like release candidate version of your website. And then if you're on not VPN, public internet, go to a different site. And then the release candidate version or whatever is only available on the VPN. And that does end up being an issue when you disconnect from VPN, but still have the cached entry for some IP that's only internally routable. So I do think this is an issue worth looking into at least.
Okay. I think it's actually, as I said, there's this. I don't think this actually interoperability issue because it's internal to the machine anyway. So your expectation is going to be same when it's your machine, and my expectation is going to be same for my machine, and it's going to be same for my machine all the time because I'm using the one implementation. I'm not going to be switching implementation that often. And even if I switch, I probably hope that the implementation will go either to the same or better. And then I actually think that yes, but the current text is saying that you must, flush the caches, and that's the must is what I'm actually, say. We could say that yes, you should be, you should remove the caches immediately when it's, clear that you are not going to be in the VPN anymore. That would be actually much better text or something like that. But I think we got to come back to the list and, discussion there and continue.
So,
I think it's, yeah.
So I think people agree that we can relax the must. So the question just becomes, are we just going to relax the must and leave it at that, or are we going to actually put some of this discussion into the document?
I mean, that's a question I don't remember from the document. Do we also flush the cache when we're connecting, or only?
Correct.
Oh.
Well, so actually, to be fair, my implementation does that. Whether the draft says it, I don't know.
All right. Okay, so we come back to the list on this issue, and I think actually it's most of to the authors to actually decide what they actually want to put there. I don't think you can propose some text, and the working group will disagree with you or agree with you. Okay, the next presentation I think is the post-quantum shared keys, where you had a pre-shared keys, right? Go to the, go here. Even if you can't see the slides, but you can still be visible from the video.
I wrote them, so I should hopefully know them. Okay, this is both quantum crypto, IGV2. Next slide. Next slide is a brief summary. Right now, we depend on Diffie-Hellman, liquid curve Diffie-Hellman for all our protection. If someone stores traffic for 10 years and then builds a quantum computer, they can then go back and read all their traffic. That's not a good thing. Next slide. And what are we going to do about it? The obvious solution would be to come up with a post-quantum key exchange. Good idea, but there's nothing that we really like right now. NIST is going to have a contest which might be in 5 or 7 years, come up with something. I don't know we want to wait that long, so let's come up with a temporary solution. Well, our strategy here is actually have both sites have a shared secret, and basically they store in the shared secret in when they derive the keys. And so if someone breaks the Diffie-Hellman, as long as they can't break the shared secret, they still can't be able to redrive the keys, and therefore we're safe. And the keys need some ridiculous amount of entropy, but it's actually achievable. Next slide, or sorry, is that okay? We mostly agreed about the requirements. Simplicity, algorithm agility is important. IPsec traffic needs to be protected. IP traffic is less important, but that seems to be a bit debatable. We have the current draft right here, and there's a couple of points that were brought up on the mailing list, and let's go through them. Next slide. First open issue was how we store in the shared secret, or what we call PPK. The draft stores it into every single child SA negotiation expansion forever. Valerie Smyslov, hopefully I'm not butchering that too badly, suggested just modifying the SKD, and that's initially one time, and then thereafter since everything is derived from SKD, we're all safe. One nice thing about that is you don't have to remember which pre-shared key you actually used. Dan Harkins also made a separate proposal about only changing the IPsec keys by modifying only the key expansion. What I would like to do is somehow come up with a consensus about which of these three approaches, or possibly a fourth approach, is what we really want to do. Comments? Questions? Is anyone awake? Okay.
Nobody else is going to talk. I'm Daryl Piper. I helped design this mess with Dan Harkins. I mean, we need to do something about this before NIST. That's my comment.
Okay.
I think actually I have proposed one way also very early. Actually, I think the keymat only has the problem that it has the bad properties if there's something wrong. If the keymat if it's wrong, we don't notice it. We just notice it. All the ESP traffic is garbage. This is why I actually want to do something in the IKE that we actually know in the IKE that for example, the authentication fails because the shared PPK is wrong, and that's why I think that the correct solution is to somewhere in both the SKD, which actually the SKD has a good property that because that's used to recreate when you are doing rekey of the IKE essay, it's used to create the next keys for after the rekey, so that will offer you. After the rekey, also the IKE traffic are, PPK protected.
Here's a suggestion. We make it really explicit. Basically, we exchange notifies after we just create the IKE essays just to negotiate that we actually do want to do this. If one of the notifies included, say, a hash of the PPK, the other side would see if it's the wrong hash, it's notify that immediately, and therefore they would know that, gee, that is what specifically is wrong.
That's one of the problems there is, that it actually knows which part of the authentication went wrong. Because then it would be able to, attack authentication and the PPK separately, because you get the different error message if one is wrong and the other is. And that's why I think that would be better to have, just normal equation to authentication failure coming out, even if you have a PPK failure wrong, or if you have, other type of authentication failure, because it's still authentication failure. Okay. That's why I think it actually is better to do it that way. And it actually gives you, we don't have to send any extra bits in the wire because we have already we calculate the hash to do the authentication hash, and so if we just put the PPK somewhere in there, we actually get an error there.
I'm just thinking, do we know that early enough?
What do you mean?
Because we don't really know the PPK until we exchange identities.
The PPKs, the authentication hash is calculated in last
Yes,
bucket,
you're right. Okay.
So
And
it's,
yeah, that sounds like a reasonable approach then.
And it actually is one of the things that, because the authentication hash is calculated using one of these S key.
Yes.
I think it's PA and PR.
Yeah.
So we actually, if we
Just
put
those-
the PPK in SKD and SKPR and PEI, then we actually get this property.
Michael Richardson. So, and I agree very strongly with Taro, and I agree that I think my only important thing is that whatever we do, it's locally loggable as to which one actually failed, so that the local administrator can actually see what did I screw up.
But that's exactly what Taro was suggesting.
And
That
that-
not happen. Yes.
No, he's saying the opposite. The remote guy doesn't know which one was wrong.
Okay.
The local guy knows what's wrong. So it can't just be opaque. Oops, stuff went wrong. All right. I mean that's what happened in like V1 with various things, particularly with pre-shared secret keys. If you got them wrong, you just couldn't decrypt stuff and you didn't really know what was going on. Right. We're a lot better situation with IP2 for a lot of reasons. I think that some people on the list or in the room, if they think this through, may ask the question, well, if I have gone to the effort of distributing per peer keys, PPKs, why am I bothering with any other kind of authentication? Because that would, seem to be stronger. And I think one of the answers is because, you have other issues of scaling and other things like this that you want to do.
Yeah.
But I think that the authors in the working group needs to ask the question, to what extent do we think that we want to encourage and make it easy for people to deploy this kind of thing in advance of this? And I think there's some serious chicken and egg problems in this process. If we don't think anybody except the super secure people are going to bother to deploy it, then it's not going to be on customers' checkbox lists. The vendors aren't going to produce it, and the end result is that no one will use it, including the people who, would like to have more than one supplier for their super secure stuff. So that's an issue, right? So if we really wanted to do it, then I think we need to make it a little bit issue. And I was very surprised in the working group, several people said, oh my goodness, we don't have to even bother deciding what the format of the PPK is printed in. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's like the most basic sysadmin thing. The guy can't type in the PPK because his format's different than the other one, and he doesn't know how to use Perl unpack on it, right? Because honestly, that's, as Yoav's told me, that's the level of administrator we're dealing with. So if we're not going to make it easy for people to use, then actually my question is, why bother? If it's only going to be used by the NSA to secure, US government stuff, you know what? They can just go to their two preferred vendors, tell them to implement your protocol. Maybe you're one of those preferred vendors already, and we're done, right? We hardly even need a standards action, right? Scott, you decide what to do. You're done. Let us know informational draft how it went, okay? If we actually want people to use it, and you can report back in 5 years as to whether it's successful or not, right? That'll be great. Maybe we'll just stamp, it was a great idea, go ahead, right? Right, exactly. But at which point we'll then have a distributed source of PPK. Okay, because that's the point. The point is to get that PPK into that algorithm now, such that in fact no one on the wire will be able to detect whether I've pre-distributed PPKs or I have a proper quantum resistant key agreement algorithm, right? Or sorry, quantum agreement key agreement algorithm. Point is that because those PPKs can come out of the other thing that you just predicted existing, right? Nobody on the wire observing the traffic can tell whether I have one of them or not, okay? Or whether I just, courier USB keys around or something to do the right thing.
Yeah, although these post-quantum crypt key exchanges are pretty large, they tend to be pretty noticeable.
Well, I assume they occur through the subspace, Star Trek subspace as well. So, so I'm not worried about that part.
If we had some access to subspace, there's a lot easier ways to do things.
Yeah, so yeah, I think actually because that's one of the reasons we want to make it very easy to implement, so that if it's going to be 2 or 3 lines of code, then people are going to be adding it regardless if it's if they think it's useful or not. It's a useful feature to it's always useful to have one more feature in your feature list, because that might be something that customer will look and, oh, your competitor doesn't have that. Oh, that's better. Or at least he has 73 lines and he has 72. So this is better because he had one more. So that's why I think people are going to be implementing it. Whether it's going to be used, that's the next question. And one of the things I don't want to be, actually, I don't think actually we need to specify anything for the PPK format, because it's just random binary opaque blob that is going to be feed into the crypto. And if
or
binary
or ASCII strings.
Yeah. How do you type in your preset key? Preset key is a binary blob. No. ASCII. Usually it's ASCII. Yeah. Yeah, but my format is not same than his. Yeah, it's yeah. In here we actually more expect it to be binary than string. Like in search keys actually used quite often, they are actually just strings with something like make me a tasty goat. Yeah. So but with here, I think we actually expect them to be more like binary blobs. And one of the things I really like to have, I would like to, what you are saying, that I need to have something now in the IKE protocol that we can plug in the real key, quantum key distribution mechanism later. So we can actually run that first. Then we get some kind of binary blobs that we can use here. And actually, I guess it's probably going to be something that we run it once, then we get 10,000 of these binary blobs, and then you use these PPKs in some kind of order, and then we have some internal format for the PPK.
Yeah, actually, I was personally expecting that once we have a post-quantum key agreement, we just slap it in to where the existing ECDH is.
It might be there, but actually one of the things is there, as I said, you say they are usually quite large.
Yeah.
And you might actually want to run them over TCP or something like that instead of UDP with limited packet sizes. So I think it might be actually this kind of pre-generation.
The other advantage that a key exchange have that we don't is that those can be run before you'd actually know the identity. With these PPKs, because you have to know the identity of the peer, there's a chicken and egg, bit of a chicken and egg. With the pure post key exchange, there is none.
And the other thing I was thinking about here is that in IKE we always assume that the configuration is in both ends. You actually, this is actually one difference. For example, with TLS, we assume that random machine somewhere can connect to server, and they don't share any configuration except the root of trusts. But with SSH, for example, I don't expect to be able to SSH from my laptop to your laptop. Usually, you don't have the FTP and the public. And with IKE, it's about the same. I think in most of the cases, we actually have, if we're talking about authentication, not anonymous or opportunistic, which Paul is coming to comment if I don't say that. But if you're talking about, normal, authenticated IPsec, so you are going to be configuring both ends. Which means that if you are going to be using some kind of PPK generation from one-time password, taking slices of there, you are doing that, in both ends anyway. So that's why I don't think we actually need to have any kind of real format for the PPK.
Tommy Polly, Apple. Yeah, I strongly agree with Tiro that. I think, first of all, that the format, even if it is specified, should not be part of this document and hold up this document from going through, because it's important to get this specified. It may be interesting to have a separate one about what are different approaches to sharing PPK, maybe as like an informational thing. But yeah, it's probably going to be binary. And there are ways that servers have to distribute shared secrets now, and they are different, and they're still going to remain different. People are going to be sharing these in the same way that they're sharing all of their other authentication material.
Quantum attack.
Which is why we should have a separate document to talk about safe ways to share them. But I think let's get this, because this is better than what we have of nothing.
Agreed.
All I'm saying is, why don't we?
This is step one.
64 gigabits all
And let's write that document in parallel, but I don't think they need to block.
Yavnir, I want to push back on what Tara said. If this is made easy to implement, then yeah, it could be 3 lines of Ike code, but that doesn't really add a feature to my product if I don't solve the key distribution problem. Because if we had a good solution for the key distribution problem, we would never have used certificates for authentication. If I had 100 gateways and I could just easily distribute the 9,900 pre-shared keys that I need for good authentication, I would never use certificates. Certificates are a whole mess of stuff to use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Certificates are crap.
Okay. Can I then ask for an alternative to this approach, which doesn't involve waiting for the next post-quantum key exchange?
Yeah, it's a band-aid, and we should think of better ways to distribute the keys. So, but if we have a solution for that, what have we been waiting for the last 20 years? No. IPv2 does have support for pre-shared keys. We just don't have a distribution that's probably something outside of Ike.
Dan Harkins. So we got kind of derailed here, but as far as distribution of these things, so PKEX defines a symmetric key package. Now there's a nice format to distribute things, and if you have mentioned on the list, if you've got armed guards that walk around distributing these things, that's probably what you got to do. But I want to get back to the slide because I don't actually remember why I suggested KeyMat, but Taro suggested something else. I didn't understand what he was saying. Where do you want to put the PPK, Taro?
So in iCrossing 2, we have this SK seed, which is generated by the Diffie-Hellman output. Then we have this PRF that generates bunch of this SK something. There is SKD, which is used to derive the key material and so on. And there's AI, A and E, and so there's encryption, authentication. And then there's this SKPI and PR, which are used to generate the authentication hashes. So there is, it's used in, let me see.
So do you want to mix the PPK in for generation of all of those?
Oh, only the SKPI and PR. The problem with iCrossing 1 was that it actually used the search keys to generate the encryption keys also. The SK, E and A, which means that if there's something wrong with the PPK, you just get random garbage.
Problem, but as you remember, that's why it's resistant to.
No, yeah, but that was the problem. That was the problem. Nobody uses it. Everybody uses aggressive mode because of that.
So you want to put it into that PRF calculation along with SKC to generate that whole string of.
No. I want to generate SKD and SKPI and SKPR as normally. No, just like they are done now. But after that, I will fix. Every time they are used, I add their PPK.
Every time or just the first time?
So you have
the first time, or actually, I generate an SKD, comma or something like that, and which has the PPK, and then use that. Something like that, but that's
so you derive SKD normally, but then if you're doing the PPK post-quantum goo, you do SKD apostrophe,
yes,
and you'll do an PR apostrophe and PI apostrophe.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure if I like that better than PMAT.
Tira, would you be willing to post your solution to the list?
I think I can find my old email from 2012. Yeah, it might be.
Marko Zhachowski, NCSE. Scott, you said earlier that you expected that once a NIST candidate algorithm came along for doing the asymmetric key exchange, then you thought that would just be able to slot in place of the ECDA.
Yeah, that's my personal expectation. That's just me, and also it would not probably be not just on itself. It might actually be alongside a ECDH key exchange.
So that was the kind of point I was going to make, that it might not be as simple as that, because it might need to be in hybrid with whatever the classic algorithms we have. There might be some negotiation parameters required. I think we'll start thinking about formats for what the protocol could look like. But
for mixing in those.
Yeah, but that's a much longer process, so.
It's further away, but I think we could be starting now, developing that framework in advance of having the NIST algorithm specified.
Philip LaFrance, hi, Sarah. Okay, so Scott and I talked about this briefly before. So I think we're all in agreement that we can't wait for NIST. We should do something now, but this is certainly a Band-Aid. I think we all agree. So my concern with this right now is it doesn't offer any forward secrecy. So I'm pretty concerned with quantum adversaries. So I think forward secrecy is a really highly desirable property to have, and I think if we're looking forward on the technologies we're hopefully to roll out eventually, then I think something like that is what we should really keep in the back of our minds. And I think you could probably achieve it with some sort of ratcheting protocol like signal releases. So I just want to just put that in the back of everyone's mind, let it percolate just a little bit, that this is something that I think we should really, really try to get. Putting that out there. Thank you.
Well, it is related to that. I mean, I don't agree with that statement that this is a Band-Aid. This is a possible solution.
Brian Weiss, I don't really have a strong opinion on how we should stir in the PPK, but I think there should be a requirement that all the subsequent IKE messages not just should be protected with PPK, not just the IPsec keys.
I just told from your approval. To the point about Band-Aid, this is definitely a Band-Aid. As I'm too short, I guess. So the Grover's algorithm, whatever. So as the quantum computing stuff advances, I'm pretty sure that, well, I'm just going to quote Shamir, but there's going to be quantum algorithms that's going to come out. So it might be good for now, but there might be new algorithms that will further weaken the keys. We should take that into consideration.
Basically, if you assign the derivation as a random form goal, basically we Grover crudely the best you can do. So it doesn't work right as long as you have a massive amount of entropy in your PPK. It looks like it should be secure.
But we should never say never on those kind of things.
So Scott, we're nearing the end of the original time that we had planned for this, but we still have some time on the agenda. So maybe 10 more minutes.
We ended up going to most of my points I wanted to make anyway. Basically, analogy, anonymity, that was a topic from last time. People agree that, okay, we really don't, either we don't need it or we need to go to pseudonyms, and then after we're post-quantum, then we can exchange with real identities. I think everyone's okay with saying we don't need to specify how to do this right this instant.
Yeah, I think as a chair, I think we need to have a separate document for that, and I think actually we have to check out if we actually need to make a charter change for that, because I don't think that's currently our charter to do pseudonyms, but I think it actually is very doable and do it afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to proceed.
Okay, so the last point I had was Michael Richardson's notes about one is how you choose the PPK we already talked about, so I don't see how we need to talk about anymore. And so my last concern is how do we make sure that 3 months from now we're not sitting up here exactly where we are. How do we move this forward?
We move to Berlin. Prague, sorry. Anyway, so yeah, so I actually want to get new version of the draft, and I think actually we had a good discussion. If you actually can get to the agreement with the where we're actually going to fill in the PPK, I think that then I get the new version out. And then it's, I think we'll have a working group last call for the document, I think.
Well, to address that, I'm Daryl Piper again. I'll help you write the document if you want. Let's bundle all this together. Can't get this designed in 3 months.
you go back a slide, I think Michael's got a point here, but it seems like we don't really need to define how these are distributed. That's out of scope. We just deal with the bits on the wire. But because of that, I think we should define some sort of a format, and I suggested the PKIC symmetric key format, that you have to ingest one of these blobs to put the PPK into your Ike implementation. And then how these blobs get moved around securely is not our problem. But I think we should.
Or just what Michael suggested,
something
base
in the draft
64.
that allows for interoperability, because Michael was saying what base 64, something like that. So we should just have some well-defined format that
syntax,
a container of these things that you get to. Well, the nice thing about the symmetric key is that you can have it's like a bag, right? You can have a bag of these things, and you can protect the bag. Now, protect it with what is a problem? That it's sort of like layers of the onion. But ingesting one of these things would be a nice way to load PPKs into your IP2 implementation, I think.
Paulo, I do think it would be good to define some sort of format for representation in ASCII, because we've seen some interoperability issues where people put spaces or single quotes in their pre-shared key, and not all vendors accept that. And so you got like weird broken PSKs, but I also don't want binary blobs in my config files. So some standard might be nice, but it should be really simple, like indeed like base 64 or something. That
we would probably say that if you use this as a string format, use base 64. All right. Anything else?
Not for me.
All right. Thank you. And let's move forward. Then we have implicit IV, and then perhaps minimal ESP.
Okay, this is a bit outdated that we had some conversation with the Echo after some user side. Let's go and okay, so why? The real reason is we want to save things by every specific question. Doesn't seem like a lot, but in fact, it's only a little contribution to reducing pollution. So most of the new algorithms are becoming popular on EADs and the different counter ciphers like ACCM, ASCCM, and ChatterPoint. They don't benefit from having unpredictable IDs like we need to have with CC. And that's why we're using the ACCM with the unpredictable cards. And they only, but they really need to have a unique ID, so that the preventive way of doing that is with the class, right? Detection of the ESP.
What?
Yeah. This is a sequence number, and this is the insurrection vector. So the insurrection vector using the counter, and the sequence number, and the idea going to be exactly the same number. So, if you follow those conventions, those two numbers are equal. So why do we need to repeat them? We don't need to repeat them. So if both sides agree, we can just split the insurrection vector and use just the initial counter. It's not no end, so that's the same slide. Next slide.
I don't know.
So we go to what we have.
Is the microphone on?
Much better.
Yeah. Turn it off, then on again. Okay. So last time we had 3 suggestions of how to negotiate it within the SA structures and things. We finally converged on using a new transform IDs for each one of the algorithms. So we have ASCCM. Now we're going to have ASCCM IIV. Same for GCM. Same for Chachapoly. And there was a question whether we want one for just plain AS counter mode, and no, everybody thought not. Okay, so next slide. And okay, that was the last thing last time. Since then, we've talked to Ecker, and he mentioned that well, he wondered why we're negotiating it like this, because it seemed inefficient, and it is inefficient. But all the other options are even worse because of the way unknown attributes are handled in the SA payloads. So that it's not great, but it's probably better than the other alternatives. Another thing he mentioned is that there is a way to do this with other encryption algorithms that are CBC based, because so we could have in the keying material extract yet another key, yet another, say, AES key, then use that for encrypting counters, and because we have the same key on both sides, then we get the same encrypted counter, and that can be used as the actual IV for CBC. That does work. We actually considered it at some point, but then we said, nah, we don't really want to do that. Yeah, you can. Yeah. Then it's harder to prove that it's okay.
All right, I think it's actually best way to do it in with the different ciphers, because one of the things that we are here talking about, we're actually modifying the cipher because the IV is part of the cipher, and we are removing that. So if you talk about the crypto context, there is we have a encryption function that gets just we call it and we get encrypted data, and usually the IV is actually inside that crypto context. You don't actually, depending on the implementation, but actually
yeah, it depends on your API.
In this case, we actually need to modify that context way, that actually how the crypto is called. We have to keep this external sequence number, and actually we have to somehow make sure that the crypto algorithm actually understands that it actually is getting different, IVs, different values for the crypto sequence numbers are separate for all time. So we have this is why I actually want to do it in it's a separate encryption algorithm. So because it's going to have a different type of for example, you can I don't think actually you can actually do the FIPS version of these, because I mean FIPS I think it actually requires the IV to be part of the context and here we actually get it from outside. So that's why I would think it might be better to have it this way.
So since I think that nobody really wants to do this for CBC, because nobody really wants CBC going forwards, then I think we can, I think the document is good as it is.
Kathleen Moriarty, responsible AD for this group for a few more hours. And my point in that, maybe some people might not know who Ecker is. He's not in the room. He's in another session. It's Eric Rescorla. He's the incoming SecAD, and we shuffle groups. I'll be sad to move on, but I will continue to obviously read the drafts in at least by IETF last call, and I'll be around, so.
Thank you for all your help with this group.
So, any questions?
So as a chair, I have this one question also. How many people have actually read the draft? Ooh, we actually have more. How many people actually have sent comments and reviewed it? Really, only just because but last time I asked this, I had a problem that there was like 1 or 2 and they were outers. So now we have a much more, which actually means that we can actually start continuing.
So imagine that Ecker is here and is raising his hand.
I have a question regarding to having bountiful new transform IDs. I must miss the discussion on the list. So why instead of using bountiful new ID, why don't we just having a new transform attribute to signal that?
Because the rules for handling an unknown attribute is that you ignore the entire proposal. So so to interoperate with older implementations, we'd have to send the whole proposal, all the proposals with the indication, and then over again without the indication, because otherwise the proposal is no good. It would just inflate the size of the SA payload much more.
Like in the future, we have new algorithm. We have to keep adding these new IDs.
Every new algorithm needs a new ID. I mean, if we just.
But we need that, instead of needing 1, now we need 2, right? 1 with implicit ID, 1 without implicit ID.
Not necessarily. At some point, supposing that it becomes widely implemented, then the next algorithm that comes along, we might have only a only in implicit IV version of it.
Okay, so anything else on this topic?
Much shorter than 20 minutes that I was allotted.
Yeah. And I think, so as we seem to be having several people reading this document, I think I will actually just then start a working group adoption call for this. So you have a couple of weeks time to comment on, and maybe so that it's going to be adopted as a working group document, and then we hopefully get going forward. All right. No, I don't yet.
Do you want us to publish the next version, or?
No, actually, is there any changes you want to do now? No.
Well, I think we remove a few words, or.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're going to make a new version,
There's just missing reference. If we make it a working group draft, then the 0.0 version can have the reference.
all right, okay. So I will make a working group adaptation call now and start it now, and then when it finishes, you can actually publish a 0.0 version of the working group. But so the next one is the minimal ESP. We did have a time for that.
So minimal ESP is about providing guidance to have a minimal implementation. So to help developers to have that. So, well, it does not update nor modify the standard ESP. Next slide. So basically we go to every fields and provide some guidance on how to implement them. For the SPI, we recommend that implementation generate a random SPI. But for some constraint nodes, random generators might be a problem. So if we have to use one fixed SPI, then we recommend to have we would like to mention that you have some limitations. And one of the limitations is that you need to be able to identify to index incoming packets to SA. So what we recommend is if you choose to limit the number of SPI that are available to you, you should have at least one per session per host you have if you're using the IP addresses. One of the questions we had is, do you think we should make some recommendation on how to perform the lookup for the SA? So if so, well, we would like to ask we recommend to have for unicast nodes a lookup performed on the SPI only, and then for all the other nodes using multicast and anycast, you look at IP address, the longest match prefix. So does it sound reasonable to have this kind of recommendation, or out of scope?
I thought ESP said that you choose the SPI by destination address, or you choose the SA by destination address and SPI. So
And SPI.
You dictate what the SPI is for the SP. I'm sorry? Okay.
Yeah. So basically, you have two kind of lookups. So I'm just wondering if we should have those recommendations into that draft, or currently we just explain the two lookups, but we don't provide recommendations. So I think it could be fine with that. However, we just have this kind of recommendation for the fixed SPI a little bit more. Well, if you're using a fixed SPI, then of course you get some privacy considerations, because then someone monitoring the network can somehow identify the device or even to yourself. So that's things we commented into the draft. Well, in any case, if you have any comment, please to provide feedbacks on the mailing list. Next slide. Well, SN padding, next header. Well, the only thing to mention is that padding is not mandatory if you use CBC, but then we don't recommend to use CBC, so padding becomes mandatory. Next slide. So above well, ICV is optional, but it depends on the crypto you use, and well, we recommend later to have authenticated encryptions. Yeah.
Mike. Next header.
Your name, Scott?
Scott Brewer. Next header, that's also used to indicate which packets are a dummy block, a dummy packet for TFC padding, TFC protection. So can we really get rid of that?
Okay.
Yeah, it's used, but of course, of course, when you are talking about, minimal version where you want to save every single bits, I don't think you're actually ever going to send the, traffic flow confidentiality packets there, because you don't want to save the bits, don't to the extra data. And actually, one of the things I think the next header and these kind of things are actually something. There's this beat mode of type of thing that would actually be also useful in this kind of situations where you have, because when we negotiate the IKE essay, we have all kind of, or Ipsecme essay, we have the source and destination addresses, port numbers and protocols and that kind of things already agreed by both ends if we make it by very specific essay. But they're still sending it in every single packet, and we always verify that there's what is actually supposed to be coming there. That there was this, discussion. I think it was Pekka Nikander's draft about the beat mode, where we actually, especially when we are talking about tunnel mode kind of thing. Tunnel mode, semantics, but the actually transport mode, type of, headers. So we actually don't have an extra IP header inside because we can reconstruct the inner header from and that actually would be useful here actually, I think also. But it's, and I think actually you will have been talking with Nikander about taking that draft also, right?
Yeah, I talked, but well, I was not sure that we were to move the beat mode.
So I think actually the next header would probably be better suited in that kind of situation than here. I don't know.
Okay. But then, what should we put as our recommendations? Okay, so that's what we have to discuss.
Cool. For Valerie on the Jabber, if ICV is optional, doesn't it mean that authentication is optional in ESP? But the draft RFC 7321 BIS mandates it.
Okay, Rob, your question. Did you say that padding was optional?
Well, what I say is that padding can be performed by the encryption algorithm or the ESP.
Okay.
So you have two ways to do the padding. So if you have a small implementation and using an algorithm that is doing this padding, you might not need it to implement it in ESP.
4303 says that you pad the plain text before encrypting, and that you have to pad the plain text to reach a multiple of 4 at least, even if you're using CCM or GCM.
Even if you're using.
Yeah, even then you have to pad to a multiple of 4. That doesn't exist in TLS, but it doesn't exist in ESP. Of course, you can say that you're doing a modified ESP that doesn't require this alignment, which is fine, probably a good idea, but 4303 says that you have to pad to a multiple of 4.
But then the padding is part of because 03 is that ESP?
It's something that the ESP does before calling the algorithm.
Okay, okay, right.
That's the way 4303.
Okay. Then what is here is wrong. Next slide. So ICV was a comment from Valerie about the ICV?
Yeah, the comment was, if ICV is optional, does it mean that authentication is optional in ESP?
Yeah. So how do you do that then? If you have
You
no,
don't actually include any way of you only include an ICV, there's a whole bunch of active attacks which become possible by someone modifying a packet and watching what happens to how the decryptor reacts to it. I would strongly recommend that it does not be made optional.
I mean, we know exactly how the crypto will react to it because all those things, all those algorithms that are defined are stream, well, not stream, counter modes. So flip a bit and you get to flip a bit in the plaintext. It's very easy.
okay, so, but what I basically want, so I don't know what is written actually in the current draft, but what I was stating is that not all the algorithm is mandatory in using ICV, and as a result, ICV was not mandatory in all packets. That said, every time you do an authentication, you need an ICV, and so because well, the algorithm we are recommending are using ICV, it becomes mandatory. So. Yeah, about the crypto suites. So we do not define any recommendations on which suite to use. We just refer to the current draft, and we provide some more text explaining why security should not be well, they should not be balanced with reducing the size of the payload or with power consumptions or bandwidth gain. Question?
Hey, sorry, again from Valerie. It's true that authentication is optional in ESP, but currently cryptographers think it is insecure, so it's better to use it always or use AEAD algorithms.
Yeah, I think the draft say must. It must in an hour, but it's just commenting. So I think we agree on what we want to say. It's just finding the right words. And so, well, we had a quite long section on the cryptographic suite just to explain security should not be done at the depend of other things. So we recommended, for example, if you want to not to implement some specific hash functions, you can reuse the AES that is in this draft for bandwidth constrained device. Then we provide a few recommendations. You can have sending payloads that are adapted to reduce the padding size, or well, remove the IV with using specific suites, or yeah, I think that's don't use block algorithms like CBC and prefer counter mode things. And that's all about this draft.
So this is, if I understand correctly, you are trying to still be exactly standard ESP, but just telling how the implementation can actually, you know, make things easier by doing some tricks. Like if you go back a couple of slides, there was talk about the next error being actually one forward. If you're talking about next error being mandatory but can be implemented fixed value, that actually so that if your implementation is only talking UDP, nothing else,
yes,
you don't have to actually, you know, take a UDP packet and find the, you know, protocol number there and put it there in next header field, but you just always still 17 there.
That's it.
Because that's what you are going to be using. Okay, so that actually makes it a little bit, but I think actually people get a little bit confused. So actually the original, you know, explanation there where we talk about that, okay, this is, you know, this is implementation tricks to implement ESP, not really actually changing any of the bits of the wire.
Yeah, that's it. That's the goal.
Okay.
I mean,
and that's why this is like the implementation guidance document, actually, not the Ipsecme.
Yeah, basically the idea is that if someone is implementing its own ESP, it's not an ESP base or not base. I mean, it doesn't break anything. That's the key idea. So before people start making their own tricks, we provide them some guidance. And this draft is not expected to be here, but it was here in order to get feedbacks. And we expect to move it forward into the working group LWIG, which is for guidance for small implementations.
So what's it's not the working group draft there yet? Is it going to be adopted as a working group draft there?
Not yet.
Okay.
They're waiting for feedbacks, or at least that we presented it here.
Okay, so I would actually encourage people to read this and, think about it that as an, this is the minimal, this is how to implement in ESP in very, very constrained device, and not think about it as a, this is general purpose IPsec implementation that is doing something. This is like I had a minimal like version 2 document there explaining how to do the, initiator side of that, because you never want to be a responder there because you're sleeping all the time.
One last comment. You asked me to comment about PHY that some constrained devices might have problems generating randomness. If they have the problems generating randomness, they probably shouldn't be doing anything with security.
So can we get a show of hands for people that have read this draft? 3, 4. Can we get some volunteers to do reviews of this draft? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I actually would like to you can send a comment to the Ipsecme list that when you have read it, even if there's nothing wrong with it. Because I'm sure you can find something wrong, but even if you don't find anything, just send an email to the list and say that you have read it, so we actually know that somebody has been reading it. So I think that covers everything we had. Anybody has any other issues? So I think that's it then. Everybody has signed the blue sheets, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. See you in Prague.
Did you check out the Etherpad?
What's that?
Did you set out the Etherpad for drops? Okay, so what's the status we have now? We have 270s up to regard ID. Same for that. And EDSA, I think we are now. Yeah, and we need to prepare that's my and this is sort of or maybe and I put this one. We're making progress. You know this, I already closed a couple of, these milestones. Yeah, I saw it. Thank you for doing